Hey there, Python programmers. Today we're going to tackle the play game method in our tic-tac-toe game. And this is really going to bring together all the stuff we've been doing. Again, this is kind of like the quarterback or the method that's in charge of making our tic-tac-toe game work. So honestly, a lot of what we're going to do in here is some logic, but we're going to be calling the methods we've already done. Again, we need to use our set player type to set up our game. We're going to need our human move to take human move input. Certainly going to need to check for win to tell if there's a win or not. So hopefully we're going to get a lot of stuff working and we'll finally be able to test some of the stuff out. Always want to start out with our doc string, and this is pretty much real simple, a method to control game play of tic-tac-toe. Cool. So one of the first things we're going to want to do is use our os.system, putting in clear or CLS. Again, it's going to depend on your operating system, but we certainly want to clear our terminal before we even get into the game. If we remembered, we imported our logo above, haven't used that yet, so it feels like it's time to. Let's go ahead and print that logo. And then usually we would print some sort of like welcome message. Welcome to tic-tac-toe. Very exciting. Cool. So next up, we've got to start setting our players. So let's go ahead and do self.player1 equals, let's go ahead and call self.setPlayerType. If we remember set player type, prompts the players for what type of player we want to use, and then it's going to return whether we're a human or a computer and save that value. Pretty cool. We probably want to, give a little feedback to, hey, you successfully set that. So we can say player one is a self dot player one. Again, that's going to get set to either human or computer. And we'll play. Boom. X. Good idea just to tell the player what type they're going to be. And again, we always want to set the first player to X and the second player to O. So now we kind of need to just do this whole thing over again because, again, we've got our first player set up. We want to set up that second player. Always great to be able to, again, just call that method we made a second time, keeping our code nice and dry. So we'll set the player type for 2. And then let's go ahead and we're going to need to report what that player is. Player 2 is a self.player 2. Cool. And then at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw in a sleep. Maybe for 2 seconds, because again, after we've reported what the 2 players are, we're going to go ahead and pretty much clear the game board and start playing and having to start prompting our users. What that means is pretty common for what we do in games. We're going to start a while loop and while true. Again, this is how our game will just keep on playing. Let's go ahead and call our print display. I forget if we set up if print display needs the board sent to it. It probably does. Let's just check. Yeah, it's expecting the board to be given to it. So we will just pass in our self.board right here. And then, let's go ahead and give this a run because we should have some prompting at this point. We're going to need to see. No. Tic-tac-toe, CDSO solution, and now we get Python. All right, so let's see. We do have an error, but so far we are printing our thing. Welcome to tic-tac-toe. What is this? Tic-tac-toe, missing one required positional envelope. Player number. Oh, cool. So let's take a peek at that. We did not pass the player number in, and again, we do need that. I believe it reports our player number. Yep, real easy fix. So again, it's just 1 for that one, 2 for that one. All right, let's give it a run again. Cool, this is looking great. So again, we can just enter a C. Player 1 is a human and we'll play X. Let's do a C again. We're not going to have the computer functionality yet, but let's at least test. Does it work? All right, we've got to change the play for that. And again, we've got our while loop that's just going to keep looping because we don't have any more there. But so far, I think we're off to a pretty decent start. And again, it was just this we had copied, but we didn't change it to, oh, perfect. So far, we also did just test out our set player type. Seems to be working outstanding. Let's go ahead and keep going. So we printed our display. Again, it's not going to continually loop. Now it's time to let our first player move. And we do have to do a conditional here, right? Because if self player 1 is a human, which again is all that we're going to have working so far, well, we're going to have to call the human move, right? So we'll do self dot human move. And we can do an else block here, because again, if you aren't a human in our game, you have to be a computer. So we'll do self dot computer move. I'm going to just put a comment in here real quick to remind us not implemented yet. Again, eventually we're going to implement the computer move, but it doesn't hurt us to code that functionality in. All right. So remember, what does self.human move do? Well, that handles prompting our human and getting only good input and running some validations. So, but that will actually, pause or, pause our code waiting for that prompt. So we aren't going to get the continual while loop thing we had before. Once we've taken in a move, we're going to want to call that print display again, because again, we want to update the display to see the brand new move that was just put in. So we'll do self.board, passed in the print display. Cool. Now that we've kind of updated our display and we see the move, well, we got to check, did the person win? I mean, obviously on our first move, no, but this while loop's going to keep going throughout the whole game. So let's go ahead and do that. And we will save it to result equals self dot check for win. Cool. So if we remember what the check for win does, it's going to go ahead and look at our self.board that we've updated with a move, and it's going to iterate through all the rows, columns, diagonals to see if there's a win anywhere. So again, if there's a win, it will either return, it's going to return who won, X or O. If it's a tie, we return tie. And most of the time what will happen is there's no win yet, and it'll just return none. If it returns none, there's no big deal for us. We'll keep going. So really, we just have to check if our result is either an X, because again, at this point, only X is played, so only X can win, or a tie. If it's one of those, the game's over. If it's not one of those, we need to keep moving because it's going to be O's turn. So if result equals an X, again, that means player X has won. We can just do a simple print of player 1 or X. Oh, can't use. And then our other thing is, and we could use an elif. You probably don't want to, you can't use an else here because again, that's a one or the other scenario. Again, most of the time, this is actually going to resolve in none. So what we'll do here is if our result equals tie, and I do think we have tie lowercase. Let's just check real quick. So X and O come back uppercase, tie comes back lowercase. So again, we just need to precisely match our string. At this point, we're going to need to do something like game ends in a tie. And to be honest, in tic-tac-toe, that's what happens most of the time. Cool. So at this point, this is going to kind of handle all the functionality of player one or X going, right? We see the display. Again, we move either human or computer. We reprint the display. We check the result. And if the result is an X or tie, game ends and we win. One thing we should put in here that I forgot is we're also going to want to return. Because if our game ends, we're done. We need to return out of the method and the whole class. Cool. Now we got to think of it's player two's turn. So one thing we also want to remember is we are keeping track of whose turn it is, right? Self.player turn, and it starts with one. So we didn't need to do anything really here, we're assuming it's one to start, but now we got to flip it. So we'll do self.player turn now equals 2. Pretty much, we have to do almost all of this over again. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we will paste it down here. We can just edit it. Same thing here, right? It's just we're now going to check player two if player two is human, and otherwise they have to be a computer. Still going to need to print the display. Still going to need to check for that win. Only real difference is we're now looking for it to be an O for our player. And honestly, the tie thing will still work for us. So cool. Last thing I'm thinking of before we give this a try and test it is, so we come to the end of our while loop at this point. What'll happen, we'll go to the beginning of the while loop, but we haven't set it to player one's turn yet. And again, we could have done it up here, but we can also just do it here at the very end of our while loop. And we'll do, oops, so dot player turn needs to now equal 1. Cool. Let's give it a save and let's check out our gameplay. See what we got here. So far, good. I am going to again do humans for both because that's what we need. We see our 2 minutes of sleep going, and we have a game board. Awesome. Let's see what we got now. I'm going to pick to move in 5 spot, and it updated it. Like things so far. Let's have O pick 1 spot. And let's go ahead and test out some of our functionality. So I'm going to purposely, oops, what happened here? We had an issue. You enter player, please enter a number. Cannot access local var playlight where it's not associated with a value. Okay. Let's see what we did there. We also accidentally, I think, put a asterisk in here. So let's go back. Run this again. H. Player move there. 1. Let's go ahead and move in 2. We'll just move in 3 for this one. And now let's see if we can get a win. Awesome. So it looks like we have our functionality working. Let's go ahead and see if we can get an O win, and then we'll see if we can play to a tie. So we'll start with 5. We'll do 1. Boom, boom. It's also nice testing out our we'll put an X up there, and now we want to do a 7. Ooh, okay, so I think that is just us forgetting to, yep. We want to update that to an O now, but it looks like that functionality is working as well. Let's go ahead and check for a tie. This does mean we got to play through the whole thing, so 5. And then we'll do 1. And then we'll X go 2. Let's have O block. O can go in 3. Oops, that's X. No, O needs to block in 7. Now X needs to block in 4. O is going to need to block in 6. Boom. And let's see, X in 9. And it ends in a tie. Cool. All right, so the only thing we really need to still do is let's check out our input validations, because that appears to be a problem. Q. All right, so again, it looks like we just have a scoping issue. Let's check that out. You entered player log, please enter a number. Cannot access local variable play log when it is not associated with a value. So what did we do there? Real quick. Let's take a peek. Try. We are causing a. Let's throw print in. So I'm pretty sure it's in one of these. Print. Find you. R. Or do human move. Human move. Let's just do a W. So we have a value error, and that should make sense to us. You entered, so it doesn't have access to player lock. Let's do, you entered in a valid character. Please try again. Let's see how that helps us. All right, and Q. All right, awesome. Now what if we do something 355? All right, I think we are doing much better now. I'm going to do a valid one. Outstanding. Cool. So at this point, we totally have our tic-tac-toe functional and working. Again, did some debugging, but we didn't really have the ability to run any of these until we now have our play game quarterback running. So next time we're going to start tackling our computer move and our minimax algorithm, and we'll also talk about just in general, how is this computer part going to work? But in the meantime, you can go ahead and play this game with, another friend or player all you want because we totally have the human functionality working. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon with another video in our Tic-Tac-Toe series.